Well, good morning, everybody. It's a beautiful day here in Alabama opening up. It's still very early, sun's just starting to come up. We're not running 100 degrees anymore, or upper 90s. We have dropped into the low 90s, mid 80s, and we're down into the low 70s, upper 60s of the evenings. So it is starting to drop. Temperatures are starting to drop finally. We are definitely heading into fall. We're probably a couple of weeks away from me putting the plants inside. It was about this time last year that I brought my plants inside once we dropped below 60 degrees. One of the questions I'm getting a lot about lately, and that's all I'm doing this morning, is I can move around and I can speak a little bit. So I thought I'd come out and say hello to everybody and give a quick update on the plants and answer a couple of questions. Plants are doing beautiful, beautiful, just growing and growing. Cherry baby with a big, huge spike coming down. One of the questions I get about is about scented flowers, about the scent on some of the orchids. One of the things I've noticed is, like the cherry baby, I don't notice any scent on it until it gets to be about 80 degrees. Then from there up, it really gets intense. And I find that with most of the orchids. A lot of the little mini phals that I've had that never had scent on them, once I put them outside last spring, I noticed once they were exposed to warmer temperatures, almost all of the little mini phals were scented of some type. Surprising, but if you have orchids that you believe are supposed to be scented and they're not, it could be that they're just not in a warm enough environment. As the temperature or climate heats up around them and releases, the flowers help release the oil, it becomes more intense too. So you may want to try a little warmer temperatures on them, or that could be the reason they're not scented very well if you're not noticing a scent. Dancing ladies are just starting to open up back here, the oncidiums. I'm still just chasing lots of growth. Everything is growing and growing and growing. But lots of blooms coming, lots and lots of blooms. More buds, more spikes. This is that dendrobium that was on that red oak I took off a few months back. Look at the root growth on it since then. Look at that crazy root growth. It has done really, really well. And now it's opening up its beautiful blooms. Let me give an update for somebody real quick. Raphael at Taming the Orchid was asking about some of those orchids he had sent me a few months back. This is RBY Sherry Style Sunshine. This one's done just beautiful. Just beautiful. It's got a lot more size to it. Look at the beautiful root growth on it. Really likes that piece of wood. It's got some more new growths coming out the bottom down here. Done very, very well. Let me see here real quick. Here it is. Laelia Gold Star times BLC. Guess what? I'm going to put the link to the video down below. When I first got these orchids, go look back and check out the size on them and the color difference on them. They were nice, healthy little starts to begin with, but their color has really, really changed. Nice, beautiful new growth on this one too. But just dark green, shiny. Like I said, I'm just chasing the new growths. All the plants have new shoots, new canes on them, it seems like. New shoot on that cattleya right here. They all look really good. Jan's going to come out here later on, I think, and give me a hand if she can, and she's going to do the camera work while I show the plants, because it's hard for me to do both of them at the same time and hold the plants nice and steady. Phals are doing great. They're holding on to their flower spikes. Look at this one with 4 spikes. This one's holding on to spikes. That one's got 4 spikes back there. Stacking up the leaves, starting to hold on to them. I want you to notice that my plants are a nice even green color. Lots of sheaths and stuff coming out. But I'm not having issues with yellow leaves, dying tips. Not at all. Not at all. They're all doing really, really well. Nice uniform color. And again, I don't have a yellow dead leaves, leaves that are yellow and burnt on the tips of them. It's that calcium. Calcium, calcium. One of the questions I'm getting a lot right now is, what am I going to be doing with my plants? Am I going to be bringing them inside? When I bring them inside in a couple of weeks, and where am I going to be keeping them, and what kind of lights am I going to keep over them, etc. I've spoken about this before. Last year when I got these plants, they were all bag babies and rescues and rootless, not very nutritionally balanced plants. They weren't healthy. They weren't in good shape just a little over a year ago. Instead of putting them into a normal winter rest last fall, when I brought them inside, I took that welding room I had and painted it white and put shelves up, and I installed 2 600-watt metal halide lights in the ceiling, and I installed a lot of fans. I had exhaust fans pulling air in and out, fans circulating air, humidifiers. I was able to keep that room at 85 degrees and higher if I wanted to, and I typically kept it 82 to 85 and down to low 60s at night. And they thrived. They did really, really well. I did it for a reason. The plants were small, immature, not very strong, not very healthy, and I knew I wasn't going to get a lot of blooms off those guys last fall, just a few, if any. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Anyway, so I put them in that grow room to get size on them. I knew I was going to lose some of the flowers by doing that, but to me it was a small price to pay for the ability to get some size to them, maturity on them, get their roots nice and healthy, and just get the plants in a better nutritional state. And I think it worked real well. My plants are much, much bigger, doing great now, have massive root systems on them. Most of the plants got at least 1 or 2 new shoots or growths last spring and winter, and a lot of them got 4 and 5. So the plants are much, much bigger, much, much larger, and are already starting to show, that they're big enough to start blooming now. So that's why I did it. Now when I bring them in this time, I'm going to put them into my sunroom. I'm not going to put them into that grow room I used last year. I don't want my plants to be triggered back into growing again. Keep in mind, since June 20th, 21st, whenever the summer solstice was, days have been getting tiny little bit shorter and tiny little bit shorter every single day since then. So these plants for the past 3.5 months or 14 weeks have been heading in one direction. They've been slowly heading towards winter rest. Days have been getting shorter, light intensity is dropping, and they've been slowly, hormones have been concentrating, they've been slowly being pushed in one direction. If I take them inside and I put them underneath artificial lights with higher intensity than what they're used to now, it will trigger the plants just like in springtime. Longer days and more intense light in the springtime triggers the plants into growth. Shorter days and lower light levels in the fall or in the end of summer, going into winter, triggers the plants into winter rest or to bloom if that's their blooming season. Some plants bloom in the springtime, so they're triggered by the longer light durations. And there are some plants like Phalaenopsis that are not really triggered by the light so much, that are more temperature sensitive and more triggered by the temperature than the light. But a lot of the orchids are photoperiod and more sensitive to light changes. If I bring them inside and put them under more intense light or a longer duration of light, they'll think it's springtime and they'll revert back to growing again, which is what I did last fall and which worked out fine. But if you're anticipating blooms and wanting blooms coming up, you don't want to do that, because you're liable to, the plants are either going to, at the bare minimum, stop or possibly abort their flowering process and revert back to vegetative state and grow new canes, bulbs, leaves, etc. Again, if that's what you want, there's nothing wrong with that. But just make sure you know what you're doing there. keep a couple of things in mind. It's the intensity of light that can help trigger the plants. So make sure when you put them under artificial lights inside, and there's nothing wrong with supplementing winter light if your plants are in a windowsill or a greenhouse or a grow room or a basement where they're not going to get quite as much light as they need, and you need to supplement it. There's nothing wrong with that, but don't give them more intense light than they're getting right now. And as far as duration goes, do a little math. Go outside and look at your plant, or pay attention to sunrise and sunset, what's going on outside. Usually a half hour before and a half hour after what they call first light. Do a little math, figure out how many hours you have of that. Let's say you have 11 hours this time of year. If you bring your plants in and put them underneath lights for 12, 13, 14 hours, they're going to think springtime is coming, and they're going to go back into vegetative state. They'll stop blooming or abort blooms that they have getting ready to start, possibly even drop spikes or buds, etc., and revert and start growing canes, bulbs, etc. That's also a good way to get keikis, by putting them out of their cycle like that. Now, these plants have never had a proper cycle, so I'm going to be putting them into their first cycle, and mine as well, so it'll all be new to me. Inside in my sunroom, that room faces due south and gets a lot of intense light this time of year and throughout the winter, and they'll do great in there, but the temperatures in there are going to run in the low to mid 70s during the day and into the low 60s in the evening, so it should be a nice, typical winter rest for them, bright with cooler temperatures. And I'm going to feed them accordingly. I have started to slow down my feed levels already. I'm no longer feeding 200 parts per million. I'm feeding closer to, 125 to 150 parts per million. But I am still feeding often. I'm still feeding probably at least 3 times a week, and if it rains, they're getting fed a couple more times. They're getting sprayed during the rainstorm, so at least 3 times a week still. But I'm feeding small amounts, and I'm feeding that to the plants that are actively growing, that have active bulbs, canes, and leaves coming out of them. I only have 1 or 2 plants that are in a little more of a dormant state, resting state right now. Those guys are not so much getting the nutrients as they are just getting regular watering just to keep them hydrated. And I'm letting them tell me what they want. So when you bring your plants inside here in a couple of weeks, or if you already have, and that's one of the questions I'm getting a lot about, is what kind of lights can I use, etc., and everything. There's lots of different lights. It's not so much the type of lights you can use, and that's a different topic, as it is to be careful with exposing them to a longer duration of light or more intense light, because it can possibly stop them from blooming and change their cycle. Just keep that in mind. The calcium, I'm still using my calcium garden lime. I'm still sprinkling that on my plants every few weeks, and I'm still using CalMag, the liquid form of calcium. The liquid form works best for the mounts because I can spray it on them, or I can mix it into my liquid nutrients, or mix it into water and let them soak on it. The granular form, the garden lime, I'm sprinkling on the pods. It doesn't cling to the mounts very well, so I'm using both for different reasons. But it does cross over. I am spraying the plants that also have the dolomitic lime on them, and I'm not having any ill effects. If anything, they're just getting bigger and greener and more lush. Again, I got to point out, I have not sprayed these plants in over a year. I brought them outside first this past spring and said I'm going to try something new. I'm not going to spray them for insects, for bugs, or anything. So I've not sprayed them at all since last June, over a year ago. And they came out the entire summer, and I'm happy to say I have not had to spray any of them. Has there been any bite marks or any issues? There's been 1 or 2 little bite marks I've noticed, but I haven't had a single issue of spider mites, aphids, scale, mealybugs, etc. And my plants are all over. There's a garden all around them. I mean, look how close the shade, little rolling shade house is to the garden area. There's insects, bugs, pests all over that garden, but they're not bothering the orchids. Their leaves are nice and thick and hard like plastic. There's a lot other plants they could eat in this garden than these. This is not their choice, believe me. And it's worked out great. Not a single issue with bugs. I've had a couple of snails I've noticed, and frogs. I guess have probably been my biggest issue. Been the frogs. They jump and knock the blooms down and break stuff and things like that sometimes. But the weather's gotten cooler and they've disappeared over the last couple of weeks. So overall, I'd say pretty good. I need to sit down and do a video and talk about the media and stuff, because I've been growing in stone and rock now for a little over a year, and I'd like to talk about that for a little while, the pros and cons with it, and some of the things I've noticed about it. And talk about growing orchids outside versus inside too. There's some changes or some differences I think it's important to realize. Um, Again, I'm just saying hello this morning, just kind of rambling on, looking at some of the plants. Lots of blooms coming though, lots of blooms. This is another one of the ones I got from Taming the Orchid. I want to do an update on. This is that little Maxillaria tenfolia. This one has just gone crazy. Lots and lots of growth. It's doubled in size. Lots of new little bulbs starting to stack up, and color is just beautiful on it. Just doing great. I find those a little tough to get started, Maxillarias. Once they get started, they do real well, but they like nutrients, they like moisture, and they like bright light, and they also like airflow. When I had those guys, I've got two of those. Here's another one. This is the other one I have. But when I had those guys inside for the winter, last winter, I noticed that neither one of them was doing really, really good. And when I put them in front of the fan where they were getting blown on all the time, so when they would get moisture, they would have a nice way to dry out very quickly. They just seemed to thrive. They just took off after that. So I make sure that they have lots and lots of airflow and circulation around them. Everything is blooming, even like these little oncidiums, the little pieces that fell off on some of the other ones. Even them are putting up flower spikes. Look at that. Starting to fill up that little pot too. Color's nice and rich on them. It's that calcium and magnesium, I'm telling you. That dolomitic lime has 21% calcium in it and 10% magnesium. It's made such a huge difference on my plants. And it's ensured that I have calcium around them all the time. I haven't lost any growth. The only growth I've had issues with were two of them that I've broke off accidentally by bumping them, which is another reason why I use those little brackets I make, those metal brackets, and tie my plants up. I don't want to break them off. So anyway, nutrient wise, yeah, I have cut my nutrients down 125 to 150 parts per million. I'm probably going to slowly go more towards the calcium nitrate and my Jax 5 1226 during the colder months. Urea and ammoniacal nitrogens don't do that well under cooler temperatures. My Better Grow has mostly ammoniacal and urea, so I'm probably going to slow down using it when I get inside a little bit. We'll see how they react, but I've got several options there. Just beautiful growth. Brassicola with a big spike on it. Excuse me. And Cyclias have gotten really good size this year. Not sure where that root's going off to. Anyway, just a quick look. I'll give you an update on Jan as well. She's doing wonderful. She ran a little bit of temperatures after her last chemo treatment for a better part of a week, and that cleared up, and she got back to her normal self and was doing wonderful. She gets her second treatment. She gets this coming Monday. And I'll keep you guys informed how she's doing. But she is doing great, and everybody says that she's responding like she's supposed to. Thank you for all the kind words and thoughts and prayers and messages to her. I've read them to her, and she sat and read them herself, and it's brought a lot of tears to her eye, but so much joy and so much strength. She's working very hard right now, still in school. She graduates first of December, first weekend of December, and I'm really looking forward to all of it. But the plants are doing great. They're just growing and growing and growing. And I'm just trying to keep up with all the growth. The little cake I put on that piece of cedar already has roots wrapped around. Look at that, it's already getting roots attached and starting to wrap around. green tips are coming out on it. It has terminated. It's no longer, the keiki itself's not going to get any bigger because it seems to have terminated the leaf. But doing well, doing very well. The little twinkle that I got at the show a week or so back, the little spike is doing great on it. But the best thing is it started growing a little growth out of the back. So I'm feeding it and feeding it because one, it's got a spike on it that it needs food for, but it also has a new growth on it. So I'm really, really happy to see that. Start to get a little more size to this one too. Little bitty thing. The orchid cactus have just gone crazy mad with all their growth on them. All the new growths. Some of them need to be repotted. Speciosum has several new growths popping out inside of it. They're getting some nice size to them. I'm just feeding them and feeding them and feeding them. That's the Dendrobium speciosum. Golden peacock has some flower spikes down there. Phals are just doing great. I've just got kind of moving plants around here and there as I'm watering them, shifting, going through them. I'm still tying up canes and bulbs just to protect them. I need to get my Kalanchoe, the flapjack from, I got this in my Hoyas from Ashley, and one of my dear friends in Texas. Ashley, I'm always keeping good thoughts for you. Thank you so much for this beautiful, beautiful plant. It's become one of my absolute favorites. It's gotten so big. I need to repot it. The pups themselves are huge. But as I bring everything inside, I'll start repotting and changing some things around. I'm not going to have as much space inside as I have outside, obviously. So we'll have to see how I do in my sunroom. And I'm still going to try and do some shows and let everybody know how they're doing. And keep you all updated on Jan's progress too as she goes through this. But I'm sure she's going to be fine. She's in great hands. The good Lord's watching over both of us, and He's blessed us with everybody on this channel. And I can't thank Him enough. This Hoya curtsy, that plant has just turned into a huge plant. I mean, it's gotten really big, thick. Here's another one of the Hoyas that I got sent from Ashley. It's just gone mad up here. Ever since I put it in this basket, it's just growing and growing. Christmas cactus. This thing's really gotten some size to it. This was a little tiny baby last spring, and it's really gotten big. Got some nice size to it. They seem to like the fertilizer. They really, it's the first time I've grown one of these, and they really seem to like the fertilizer. Well, I've got to get to it. I've got plants to feed, things to water. I just wanted to say hello, tell everybody thank you again for all those kind words and all those great questions. You guys asked the best questions. And give you a little peek at the plants and how they are doing. They seem to be doing great. I'm just tracking the growth and feeding them. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Thank you for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for all those great questions. And as always, lots of love from Alabama.